Now, in chapter 10, and in the last video I talked about Victor finding that comfort in nature. We get a foreshadowing at the second paragraph in chapter 10. At the end of that first paragraph, he's talking about how nature bade him be at peace. But then he wakes the next morning and he said, "Where had they fled when the next morning I awoke? All of the soul inspiriting fled with sleep, and the dark melancholy clouded every thought." This is foreshadowing, because of course it is in this chapter that Victor finally, after years now, and I'm sorry the total years escape me, but it has been years since he created his offspring, he's finally going to come face to face with his creature. Now I do want to point back to one other time when you have this shift between nature being benevolent and kind, and it was when Victor was traveling from Ingolstadt back to Geneva on the carriage, and everything was quite well, and then the scene changed to one of evil, and he knew that his creature was out there, and now it's finally coming to fruition that he is going to meet him. And he talks about for the first time as well, which is a theme. It's not the first time he talks about it, but he reiterates it, about how better off people are without knowledge. And we will see this develop even stronger in the end of the novel. But he says, "Alas, why does man boast of sensibilities superior to those apparent in the brute? It only renders them more necessary beings. If our impulses were confined to hunger, thirst, and desire, we might be nearly free." Now remember this passage, because we're later going to see when the creature talks about his experiences, how if he had remained a brute without understanding speech or learning to read, then he would have been better off. And Victor constantly harps on this throughout the rest of the novel, saying how knowledge is bad. Now, this goes back again to Milton's Paradise Lost, and I realize I'm shaking my finger at you, but it goes back even further than that to the Hebrew Scriptures in the book of Genesis, when Eve eats from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and it is that knowledge that causes the downfall of humans. Victor's downfall is seeking knowledge, how to end death. It is even further the creature's downfall. When he does learn how to speak, he understands the spoken word, and he wants to gain even more knowledge. But back to Victor's meeting with the creature. First, he's talking about the wandering spirits, and he says, if you're there, take me with you away from, this life, because he is just miserable. And then he says, "As I said this, I suddenly beheld a figure of a man at some distance, advancing towards me with superhuman speed. He bounded over the crevices of the ice, among which I had walked with caution. His stature also, as he approached, seemed to exceed that of man. I was troubled. A mist came over my eyes, and I felt a faintness seize me, but I was quickly restored by the cold gale of the mountains." It is his unnatural creation that for a moment snaps him out of his connection with nature, but then it is the cold gale of the mountain, nature, that revives him. We also understand, if we had seen the movies and had not read the book before, that the creature is not this shambling, awkward monster as he is often portrayed in the movies, but he's very nimble and can go up and down the glaciers with no problem at all. He's very strong. And not only is he very strong, but he has to be very intelligent, because later we learn how he learns to speak and to understand language and to read. So not only is he physically strong, but he is very intelligent. And Victor greets him with, "Devil, do you dare approach me?" Which is kind of strange on Victor's part, because Victor was the one who ran out on him. And the creature says, "I expected this reception." And he says, "Yet you, my Creator, detest and spurn me, thy creature, to whom thou art bound by ties only dissoluble by the annihilation of one of us." So the creature is confirming this duality between himself and Victor, that we are so closely bound. That binding will never will never be severed until one of us is dead. And they go on, they exchange a couple of, barbs back and forth. And Victor says his rage was without bounds, and he goes after the creature, and a lot of good that's going to do him. And then the creature begins to speak. And I don't know, Victor, he doesn't even say, "Well, hey, where have you been? Yeah, how did you learn to talk?" I don't know. He's so wrapped up in his own hatred and his own misery that it doesn't even occur to him to ask the creature about this. But the creature says, "I am thy creature, and I will be even mild and docile to my natural Lord and King, if thou wilt also perform thy part, the which thou owest me." And then a couple of sentences later he says, "Remember that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel." And then he tells Victor, "Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous." And then he goes on to talk about being benevolent. This is a direct parallel to, again, Paradise Lost, in that Satan, Yahweh creates Satan, but then he creates Adam, and then and Satan in Paradise Lost is so jealous of Adam that he then, I'm sorry, I'm saying too many times, he conspires to bring down humans in the same way that he basically brought down himself. So again, you have those parallels and allusions to other literature. And allusion is A-L-L, not I-L-L, not illusion. And an allusion is a reference to another piece of literature. So within Frankenstein, you have a lot of allusions to Paradise Lost and also the Hebrew Scriptures. And then the duality again. He says, "You accuse me of murder, yet you would, with a satisfied conscience, destroy your own creature. Oh, praise the eternal justice of man." And though we don't get into it at this point, later the creature talks about when he learns to read and sees everything that humans have done. On one hand, he sees all of the magnificence of humanity, and then on the other hand, he says, "Oh, praise the eternal justice of man," and he is being quite sarcastic there. And so again, that duality continues. And so what does the creature want from Frankenstein? Well, it's kind of easy to guess. And first, though, before the creature tells him what he wants in order to be happy, he tells him about his life after being brought to life and then refused by his male mother.